You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast.
All right. Hi, Ryan. So we'd like to just start off with a few basic questions, if that's all right with you.
Sounds good.
Here we go. First question. How dare you?
Am I being detained?
Well, I mean, I'd like to add, who do you think you are?
Oh, come on. I don't have a clever answer for you. I didn't come on the show to be funny. I'm Ryan Burgett, and I deserve to be here.
Welcome to Make Liberty Great Again, the best damn liberty podcast that you've never heard of. Phil and I will be your guides as we peer into the ridiculous reality of our society and our government. Let's get to it. Thank you for tuning in today to Make Liberty Great Again, Revenge of the Nerd. I'm your host, Cam Harless, and with me today is my lovely co-host, Phil Padilla.
Boy, do we have a special episode for all of you today. This is our very first interview episode, and we're very excited about it.
Exactly. We decided that, one episode a week wasn't quite enough, so maybe we throw another one in at the end of the month where we talk to someone who's particularly knowledgeable about something and do it kind of in a Rogan style where it's more, free, a little bit more conversational rather than just a straight up interview where I have a list of questions that I ask. There are some things I definitely want to talk about, and we'll definitely hit that. But we wanted to have someone on who we could talk to about liberty issues and something that they specialize in. So Phil actually wanted to get us started with some fun questions so that people get to know you just a little bit better.
But before we do that, who's the nerd?
I would say in the hierarchy, it's probably the ex-Marine.
Okay. So that's why it has the
I even
title.
did nose goes.
The nerd, definitely Phil. Got it.
All right. You got me. I'm out. I'm out of the nerd closet. All right. So before we jump into it, I'd like to start out with a few icebreakers to help the audience get to know you on a deeply personal level. Now, because the people out there are really going to want to know what makes you tick. So here we go. First icebreaker, coming in hot. What is one article of clothing that someone could wear that would make you walk out on a date with them?
I mean, well, that's rough, because if I say nothing, it gives the implication that if someone's naked, I go with them. As opposed to saying nothing, that there's nothing that would get me to go on some date with somebody. I'll just go with nothing and leave it to your imagination.
Right.
Well, this isn't off to a good start, but...
All right. So if you were to sing a song in karaoke, what song would you pick? Which Creed song would you pick?
Creed song? Well, if I'm doing Creed, it would have to be Children Don't Stop Dancing.
Right. The creepiest one there is.
Oh, such a great song. You should hear me in the kitchen.
All right.
Alexa loves it.
Do you do the Scott Stapp voice when you sing it?
Stop.
Was that your echo?
She heard me talking about her. I wasn't talking to you.
I thought he was saying stop because he was done talking about this and he wanted you to shut up.
No, she's always listening to me. If I say anything about her, she knows.
You have the NSA in your house.
No, she's better than that. She's worse. All right. Yes, I do it in the Scott Stapp voice.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that. It's my home.
It's the only way to do it.
It's the only way to do it.
I'm a libertarian.
All right. So last one, and we really want you to take your time on this answer. It's important. If you could be any vegetable you wanted, what would you be and why?
Cucumber. I've always liked Larry.
Is it because you're so cool?
I just like singing the songs.
All right, so
that's great.
I kind of beefed it up front and didn't tell them who you were besides you saying your name. in the
And
beginning.
you deserve to be here.
Right. But this is Ryan Burgett. He's actually one of my closest friends at this point. He's my tech guy in every sense. If I have an issue with something, I'm like, Ryan, help me. I'm a little bit techie, but not nearly as techie as he is. And in fact, he has worked on a lot of the cool stuff that we have been doing with the network. Because when David Derryberry first came to us and said, hey, y'all should have an MLGA network, me and Ryan were both like, yes, that's a great idea. And me and Ryan went in two different directions. Ryan went into the tech direction. I went to the creative direction. So I was like, we got to get shows going. We're going to have creative and original things going on. And Ryan was like, we need a website where we bring everything together. And that's where the MLGA network came from, was Ryan. David Derryberry gave us the idea, but Ryan ran into that whole hog. And honestly, I've been between that and another project that he's working on that I don't think I can say anything about yet. I mean, I've been beyond impressed, and so that's why we brought him on, because we want to talk about technology and liberty. One of the things that I think of when I think of technology, the internet, cryptocurrency, etc., is I truly believe that technology is, and where we're going with technology, is the best way for us to get rid of the state. Because the state, if you really think about it, was a technology. It was something that was implemented typically by tyrants, and it's something that people have used to have specific things happen, and it's obsolete. It doesn't, like the U.S. government, the federal government, there are 300 million people, and this technology doesn't work. And it's also immoral, but one of the things that I keep seeing with the decentralization, or pushes for decentralization with the internet and stuff like that, is that technology is the way we defeat the state, or at least one of the ways. And so I wanted to have Ryan on to kind of talk about that somewhat, because he lives in that area. I don't. I make things out of leather. So figured he'd be the person to talk about that with. So as long-winded as that was just then, I figured I would toss a first question to Ryan, which is, I know that you believe in agorism and working in gray markets and working against or counter to the state. And so I just wanted to see if you agree with that assessment of technology, and if you could actually define agorism for us and how that might work within that paradigm.
Okay. Well, I won't give you the official definition of agorism. What I'll give you is my definition, how I define it. I like to define it as libertarianism with feet. There's you have your Libertarian Party libertarians. They're something else with their party and their political goals and trying to get into office and running their feet, doing their thing. But then you have the anarcho-capitalists, and these guys are the ones who really know their stuff. They study up. They have read the greats. They understand classical liberalism and libertarianism. The only problem is nobody within the anarcho-capitalist frame really gave a clear way forward. I mean, they can articulate freedom and natural law and liberty and individuality so wonderfully, but there is no clear way forward. So what happened was, after Murray Rothbard wrote his classic For a New Liberty, which was the first Libertarian Manifesto, Samuel Konkin III said, hey, this is fantastic. This guy gets it. He's amazing. He said, but we need a clearer way forward, so he wrote what he called the New Libertarian Manifesto, which followed up Rothbard's. And in it, what he described is a practical way forward, which is counter-economics. So agorism and anarcho-capitalism have the same ends, basically a stateless system. The only difference is agorism says, okay, now the way we get there is via counter-economics. And what that means is basically going through our life and finding alternate markets for everything that we need. everything that the government provides, everything that we have, in order to separate ourselves from the government. So, find everything we need, but through our own markets, our own ways, our own separate ways, so that if the government ceased to exist, tomorrow, it wouldn't affect us. It wouldn't bother us because we'd be set. So counter economics, it's not about black markets. It's not about doing stuff that's illegal. It's about gray markets, which is just doing what you want. So if you want something, well, you go get it. If you want to do something, you measure the pros and the cons, whether it's worth it or not, and you go for it or you don't go for it, whatever. The point is, you do what's right for you and your family. You don't sit back and ask what's legal or what's this or what's that. And what's best for your family is separating yourself from the state as much as possible. So
that could be something as simple as collecting rainwater when the government tells you you're not supposed to.
Yep.
I mean that's a simple example, but what are some which I don't want to put you on blast and have the government come to your door and say, hey, you're doing this kind of thing, so I won't ask you what you do necessarily unless you feel comfortable saying it, but what would be some examples that would be simple for someone like me, someone like Phil, to implement in our lives that could help us be more free than we are today?
Really, that's specific to your individual life. It's a matter of what you need,
Right.
Like the people whose children are helped by CBD. Get it. Don't ask permission. Go and get it. That's what you need, Or it's good to have extra water on hand, so collect rainwater. Don't ask what your city's rules are. You collect freaking rainwater. You don't sit around and ask for permission to do that.
Right. And when bridging that to technology, it makes me think of Ross Ulbricht, the guy who set up the Silk Road. That's an example of using technology. I'm not saying that you should go out and, buy drugs, go get some meth off of the dark web. But, that's a way that people decided voluntarily, hey, let's get together and you have something you need, I have it, let's try to do this and not have the government look at it. Even as simple as things that are legal to sell. Like why?
And is an anarcho-capitalist.
Unfortunately, he is, in prison.
Yep. Free Ross.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that. The government had to make an example. He created a truly free market for anybody to just go and interact and do whatever they needed to get the goods. Like you were saying, I need this, I'm gonna go get it, and he's gonna be in jail for what, 2 life sentences?
But that was agorism in practice,
right?
Because they didn't ask anybody for permission. Here's what I have, and here's what I'll take for it. And they traded in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is another fantastic way that you can do that today, because you can trade value between people.
But it just goes to...
You can purchase things, you can pay people for their services, and you don't have to ask anybody's permission. You just do it. Right. It's just between you and them.
Right. That's...
How long did the Silk Road function before the state caught up to him and decided to make an example of him?
It wasn't long. It was only a couple of years.
Still,
remembering correctly.
Still a couple of years. Of course, the state has a hard enough time finding people on the street who were selling stuff. But a couple of years in technology is 10 or 20 years. That's like the government being behind.
Yeah. It's too bad they caught him at all. They really shouldn't have.
Right. And what did he even do that was illegal?
They did things. Well, he didn't.
I think it's conspiracy charges.
All he did was provide a platform.
Yeah.
Well, he just provided the platform, but then they added these other, imagined things on top just to make him look worse, even though he wasn't convicted of any of the other stuff. It's like, oh look, he was hiring assassins to take people out, and it's like, okay, yeah. It's theatrics. Yeah. To make him look like this horrible person, put all these things on so that they eventually get him on what they were trying to get him on,
Right, and that's not even new. When I think of Ross Ulbricht, I also think of, 2 other people who right now are either running away or are stuck and essentially imprisoned because they use technology to butt up against the state, which is, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. These are people that saw the state doing something wrong and something evil, and they decided, hey, we've got to let people know. We've got to stop this. And every time that's happened, there's an example made.
Well, and also you have Aaron Swartz.
I don't
One
know.
of the-
I don't know of Aaron Swartz.
Yeah, one of the founders of Reddit, one of the
Okay.
guys who helped design the RSS spec, created the Creative Commons license. But yeah, he was something else. He was a forward thinker, really cool guy. And he believed that information was made to be free. So
Right.
guess what? He liked to put information out there. And one of the bits of information he did was he was collecting, what are they? Journals. You know, what are the fancy journals that they put online, you know, by scientists and things that you
Okay,
have to pay a
okay.
whole lot of money for.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
academic papers, stuff like that.
Academic
Oh, yeah.
journals.
The peer-reviewed
and
stuff.
things that exactly. The stuff that regular folks aren't allowed to see, and yet everyone uses as to back up what they're saying. You know, as in, here's what you should believe, and there's this peer-reviewed study to back in this journal, in this reputable journal to back it up.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, let me see it. Oh, you can't see that. The doctors and the scientists, they're the ones who have access to that stuff. Well, these papers were from a public university. So
Okay.
Aaron Swartz said it's a public university, and yet they're hiding this information from people. He said, no, this should be free. So he went to the university and literally downloaded the files and was going to put them online, and the government caught him, and they were going to make an example out of him and ruin his life, and he ended up killing himself.
Oh man.
But he had so much potential, and there's a fantastic documentary about him on YouTube. I believe it's called The Internet's Own Boy.
Okay, I'll have to check
Really
that out
good.
because I didn't even
Yeah,
know anything
highly
about
recommend
that.
it. But that's the thing, he didn't ask permission. It's like, no.
Right, and
put these online.
why would anyone think that you'd have to ask permission to upload
Files.
journals that are public? I mean, I don't.
Well, they're
agree with-
supposed to be public,
Right,
except
right.
that they were intentionally hiding them behind paywalls and making a killing off of them. You
Right.
know, even though that was the agreement. If you're a public university, then your information becomes public. But
Right,
yeah.
as you know, as
that's
if
more
the-
documented inside the documentary. So don't take my word for it.
as if the state ever actually follows through on any of its own rules.
Oh, of course not. It's always for their benefit,
Right.
which is why we need to find ways around them.
Right.
So that our lives are not dependent on them, so that our daily needs are not dependent on trade routes that are controlled by the state. You know, I mean, whether it's food, you know, if you're dependent on food from halfway around the world, that has to be allowed by the federal government to the United States. Like, well, maybe you just want to grow your own,
Right.
Or, you know, water. Well, don't trust that the government's always going to be delivering you water. Like, collect your water, maybe dig a well, figure something out, move to a place where you can have that freedom.
Right, and not to mention that, you know, there's always a push for more centralization, more and more. I mean, at some point, technology is always ahead of the government, but there could come a time where the state could start to centralize it even more, and the government in DC could have control of all power, all water in one sense or another, right?
Yep.
What happens if they decide to shut that off?
That's what that girl from New York wants, you know, complete central control of, you know, what's your name?
You mean Phil's girlfriend Sandy?
Ooh.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Yes. Yeah. No, but she wants to centralize all. Oh my goodness, her Green New Deal. That was hilarious. Just refit every single building in the entire United States. Just do that little.
Stop all the cow farts.
Yeah.
The Great
But
Cow
yeah, no.
Holocaust of 2020.
But once again, you know, there's people like her in DC who openly talk about seizing control of the entire grid. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. Centrally, completely. I mean, think of California. How disgusting that is and how crazy that is. Those
People
are exactly
crap on the
kind
streets
of.
there.
I know, but those are the same kind of people who are the ones who want to centralize power more and more and more, you know? So imagine if the people who run California's power are, say, in DC, controlling the country's power.
Right, and it's amazing to me to hear the people in California and in New York still talking about more and more centralized control, and they're currently so angry that this Donald Trump dude is president. Like, why
And they're
would
also
you,
fleeing those states.
right? Why would you want to put more and more power into Donald Trump's hands if you think he's a lunatic tyrant who's going to kill everyone?
Right.
Like, where's the logic?
There isn't any.
Well, there's none. Yeah. That's pretty easy.
Nowhere. So speaking in these ways, so what we've talked about cryptocurrency and the Silk Road, and I mean, what technological advancements that are either here or are coming are you particularly excited about when it comes to being more free?
Well, the top is cryptocurrency,
Right.
which we didn't really talk about.
Well, let's talk about that
yeah.
because I have a pretty okay understanding of it, but I'll like a lot of people I know are kind of like, oh yeah, cryptocurrency, that doesn't work. So I mean, I disagree with them, but I'd like to know more about that.
Well, it's because people don't understand it.
Well,
But cryptocurrency solves problems that we've never been able to solve in the history of the world. It is amazing. Like with cryptocurrency, two people from anywhere in the world can exchange value basically instantaneously. And they don't need anybody's permission to do it. They don't have to go through a bank controlled by the government. They don't have to go through the government. They don't have to do anything. They can just one-to-one, person-to-person. They can instantly send them money. And they can do it in ways that are untraceable.
right.
Because even if Bitcoin's way more out in the open, but there's lots of other coins out there which are very privacy-minded. And they can't be easily tracked and watched. So this is amazing. This is exactly what we've been wanting. And a lot of people talk about, gold and silver. Like we need to stock up on gold and silver, so that we have money for when the government doesn't control money anymore. Well, I'm seriously, how am I gonna buy that T-shirt from you? Yeah, you can, selling you T-shirts.
Right.
How am I gonna buy that T-shirt from you with gold and silver? Once again, what I have to do is I would have to have my gold and silver in some holding company.
Right.
Okay. And then they would have to issue some sort of token attached to a certain amount of value of gold or silver.
Yeah, or a
and then
receipt.
we'd have to trade. Yeah, exactly. Receipt. We'd have to trade those, presumably digitally. And then they would physically move the gold or the silver from one location to the other, or they would have both. They would have an agreement worked out or whatever. But the thing is, we're still relying on these other people to handle this stuff for us. And we still have our physical our physical gold or silver sitting somewhere else under someone else's control. And
Right.
it could disappear. Like the government, supposedly backs up our money. What's it called?
Fiat.
Yeah, but what's the insurance on the banks?
Oh, FDIC.
Yeah, exactly. The federal, they say that we can do that, but that's because the money they have to work with it's funny money. It's fake.
Right.
Whatever. They can do whatever. But if you have gold, if your wealth is in gold and that gold is gone, it's just gone.
Right.
It's
and
never.
it makes me think about that earlier point. At one point, using gold, having it in a warehouse, and where someone holds it, where you give them a receipt, where that gold can be moved to someone else's warehouse where they hold on to it. That's old technology. And that's not, I mean, they eventually got rid of the gold standard, but it wasn't an update in the technology. It was just removing an essential part of that particular set of technology. So now we're moving, I mean, why did it take so long for us to move past that?
Move past gold?
Move past gold, move past fiat, and get to cryptocurrency. This seems like something that should have happened far earlier than it did.
Not necessarily. We needed technology and software to get to the right place.
Right.
So a lot of it has to do with just open source and open technology. Because a lot is, you couldn't have imagined all this stuff. The federal government was trying to control cryptocurrency back in the 90s. They were trying to control it all themselves, but then eventually they stepped back. And when they stepped back, that's when people started really getting into cryptography and encryption and building these amazing new standards for exchanging information in secure and private ways. So, that was doing its thing. But in the 90s, all software was basically proprietary.
Right.
You had some freeware that went around, whatever. But at the same time, the code itself, the source for everything, was proprietary. It was always controlled by people. But starting with the Mozilla folks, they said, hey, ours is going to be open. We're gonna open source our software. People started putting their software out in the open, and they started finding new and better ways to make money off their products. The internet came, and suddenly people could share software. So suddenly your proprietary software wasn't so special because you didn't have to go to the store to get it. You could download a torrent of it, or before torrents, go to Morpheus and download it, whatever.
P2P.
Well, exactly. So the software industry moved forward, okay? And with the opening up of software, with the open source revolution, everything happening, it made everybody developers. Because regular people at home, everyone started getting involved, building little software, doing this, doing that, doing their own projects. And then you had people contributing to projects, getting involved. And we have more software today than we could have possibly dreamed of back in the day. Because in the 90s, it was the big companies who were making the software. Nowadays, you have Microsoft and Apple and other people using, JavaScript libraries in software that they build, okay, that was contributed by everyday people like me,
Right.
Because people are contributing to code, and then that code's being used other places, moving all over. But that's cryptocurrency, they're originally with Bitcoin. There was the white paper. Here's how it's going to work. But then it really evolved into a bunch of people working together to make the code better and figure out exactly how to implement this just right and how to add features. And then you had other people who said, "Ooh, that's great, but here I'm going to fork it. I'm going to take I'm going to split and take my own copy of the code and make it better in my own way." So they started changing it. Then other people. So this is amazing. But this wouldn't have been possible in the past because of the way that software was built. But today, software is open and it's collaborative, and it's just a completely different world, something that couldn't have even been imagined 20 years ago.
Right. Not to mention, I love open source software because so much of the time, it's absolutely free. And so,
Yep.
everything, everything that I'm using to do the show is free. I use Audacity, open source, free. To make the art, I use GIMP. So what everything I do comes from this free model that came from what you were talking about, from essentially opening up the market.
Yeah. But our MLGAnetwork.com, that's actually open as well. You can see the entire source code for that on GitHub, completely out in the open. And why not?
So you do a lot of work in tech. I know
I'm a software developer.
Right. And so, I know what that means. I've seen some of the products that you've created. But, what do you think has been the most exciting thing that you've worked on when it comes to technology?
Well, the most exciting thing I've worked on so far, project I'm working on now, I'm really excited about. But until now, the thing I've been most excited about is in this topic of what we're talking about here is the cryptocurrency exchange.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one cryptocurrency called Blocknet, and I've had the privilege of being able to do work on that, on the UI for that. And what this is, when cryptocurrencies were initially made, or originally Bitcoin and the others started popping up, if you wanted to get one of those cryptocurrencies, you'd have to go to some exchange on the internet.
Right.
Okay, now the cryptocurrencies say, hey, come use our cryptocurrency and be anonymous and, be free. Do whatever you want. Don't ask permission. Except, if you want to get that Bitcoin, you have to go on the internet to some website and send them actual dollars, send them your
bank information,
actual name and your actual information, and then they send you this coin, which is going to, get you out of the system. It's like, It's a weird way to do it. And of course, as was guaranteed to happen, the little guys went away, the little sites. And the big ones got bigger and bigger.
Like
and
Coinbase,
then once they got
right?
Coinbase, exactly. Once it got big enough, it wasn't feasible to keep doing it as its own little shop. They had to get in line with what the federal government's doing and pushing toward. So suddenly now they're collecting information for taxes and sending their users tax forms and all this other stuff. So, yeah, well, that's what you get when you're a legitimate quote unquote business, in a totalitarian system.
Ugh.
But the ideal was obviously that you would be able to trade any coin you wanted to, for any coin you wanted to. Just one-to-one. Say, hey, I'd like to trade 3, electroniums for 2 blocknets. Or I'd like to trade, half of it Bitcoin for 3 Ethereum. Whatever. Or Ether. Okay, whatever. But that technology hasn't been there, okay, until now. These guys I'm working with, these BlockNet guys, they have this program called BlockDX. And what they actually do is they connect them all together. So I can open on my computer Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. They have tons and tons of the biggest coins you've ever heard of. You run those, you put those wallets on your computer, okay? You open up their program, and magically, you're just trading back and forth, direct, one-to-one, saying, hey, I'd like to trade this many of this for that. And there are no user accounts. There's no dollars going into the thing.
Just like wallet IDs?
Nothing. It's just you. It's the only identifier is your public key. Okay? I mean, your private key lives in your actual wallets. But these exchanges are done one-to-one, person-to-person, directly. And it's completely decentralized. There is no central server that this stuff goes to. It literally goes person to person, just with the people who have the exchange running on their computers. Like, it is mind-blowing. It's just a program you run on your computer, and that's it. No website to go into, no logins, no nothing. So, I mean, this is absolutely unheard of in the history of the world. And this is amazing. It's a completely free market. And I got to be a part of it. So
That's
that
awesome.
makes me really happy.
Well, and I do think, we've been talking for a little bit, but before we get so far that people turn off the podcast, because people do that. I'm not saying that anyone here is boring, but that's just what I've noticed people do, because I see my data that I get, and it's like 85% of the podcast was listened to, 75%. So, I mean, at some point I see where people turn it off. Before we get to that point.
Well, it's because of the nerd Phil.
Nobody likes me.
But before we get to that, I do want to talk about an MLGA Network original podcast that's going to be coming soon. If you want to go ahead and talk about it, I'd love to give you that space, man.
Yeah, we're working on a new one called Thank You for Your Servers. And it's going to be hosted by myself, Ryan Burgett, as well as Kim Shang and Thaddeus Preston. So it's going to be an absolute blast.
I
Really
just thought about DC Talk. 2 honks and a Negro. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah, pretty much. But we'll be talking about tech. So it'll be a matter of going through some of the recent tech news, and then a quick look at the cryptocurrency markets, what's changed in the last week. The idea is to come out with episodes every 1 or 2 weeks, and then have like a practical tool, as in, hey, you should install this software on your computer, because guess what? It's going to give you these cool features. And then possibly like some sort of deep dive. It's like, let's talk about email encryption if you need it. How do you do it? What is it?
Right.
Yeah. I think it would be both interesting for people who want to know tech news, and we're not just going to be doing the tech news you'd read, at Ars Technica or whatever. I think we're putting together some really unique and interesting stories, but the big thing is we're coming at it from a libertarian perspective, which you'd think in the tech space. The tech space, it's kind of a wild west in so many ways, and yet the people who you hear who are from the tech space they're just like establishment robots.
Right. Silicon Valley is just filled with
I can't
commies.
even wrap my brain around it. I know. And not just them, the tech industry that loves all these tech people. Like, they are completely, you can't get more establishment than these people. So, I mean, we don't plan to, I don't see our thing as, being the next Twit or something. But I think we will do a good job just giving some good news from a libertarian perspective, maybe
Right.
for the people who've turned off some of those shows, like Kim and I and others who listen to, Twit and other shows for years and then just couldn't take it anymore. Like when it came to net neutrality and these other things where these guys are just like sucking the government, whatever, like it just couldn't do it. So hopefully we could get those people. We're like, hey, you still want to listen to tech, but we're not gonna do that. Yeah. There's definitely a market for it.
Right. I'm excited about it primarily because I use a lot of tech and I work with a fair amount of it, but I've never kept up with the news of it. I mean, when I did, and you're gonna hiss and throw up your crucifix when I say this, but when I worked at Apple, I was more into learning of that stuff. But after
this
I
interview's
left,
done.
but after I left Apple, I've been out of the loop. Like, I mean, I used to watch all sorts of things about tech, but I've been out of it, and I watch just the communism that's in Silicon Valley, and it just turns me off. Like, why would I push that? Why would I go and seek that out? But speaking of, and I just have this is a question that came to mind. When it comes to Silicon Valley and tech and the incredible left-leaning of, Twitter, Facebook, just anyone you can name, essentially, do you think that's a product of just where it is, that it's in San Francisco? Or do you think that it is just par for the course because of, probably maybe cronyism has something to do with it? Like, what do you think
It's just
that has? Do you have any thoughts on that?
humanity. Megalomaniacs, they seek out those positions of power, and if there's yucky people in every industry, and they have a tendency to work themselves into the ones that they can control the most people. So I don't know, it's one of those weird things, like Mark Zuckerberg. He seemed to start off as just kind of a cool, almost college student, wants to create this cool thing.
I mean, an autistic one, but yeah.
But still, I mean, whatever. It doesn't seem too much different from myself or other people, except that I'm 10 years older than him. But or than when he started Facebook.
Right.
But I don't know. Time and money and power and having world leaders like paying attention to him, who knows? That guy's turned into he's become a monster.
Who could imagine back in 2007, 2008 when Twitter came onto the scene, and I was an early adopter on Twitter. And I didn't know how to use it because no one else was on it, and it was kind of stupid. What am I supposed to just tell them? Oh, I'm at the store. Like, I didn't get it at first, and then I hung out and I waited, and it kind of built. But who at that point in 2008 thought, hey, in, 8, I don't even know, wait, that's almost 10 years. My God. Who would have thought that, 9, 10 years later, that the quote-unquote leader of the free world would be trolling people on Twitter, and that this would be such a big thing for news and for, I mean, just like, I never would have thought that. I just literally thought, oh, well, I know what Sean ate for lunch for the first 3 months.
Yeah. Well, that's the cool thing about technology. It changes and goes places nobody expects. Nobody could have expected what happened with software today to happen 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, if you buy software, you go and you buy software. And then you own it, whatever. But the thing is, as people started being able to share software and companies started losing control of their own product, well, they had to decide what to do. And a lot of companies, rather than dig in and try and retain control, they said, okay, well, how can we change? How can we pivot?
Right.
How can we make money? So they moved to free software models where you basically give away your software. So guess what? You encourage people to share your software. Make sure everybody has our software. And then you provide services on top of that you can pay for.
Right. Or just monetize it with ads.
Well, yeah, but you couldn't have imagined those things back in the 90s. That just wasn't on people's software radar. But it was because of how technology changed that it forced them to, well, it didn't force them. They could have kept pushing harder, but thankfully they didn't. Other industries like movies and music, they haven't changed with the times. Right. They're still trying to prop up the same profit models that they had from the 60s through the 90s. And that isn't going to work forever. They're trying so hard, but it won't work forever. They need to eventually change like the software industry did.
Right, and that's why they're so dependent and they fight so hard for IP.
Yeah.
Because they have to have the state gun in order to get their money.
Well, that's what they're doing. They can't keep making the money that they make in today's world, with their previous profit models. But rather than invest the time and money to update how they make their money, instead, they're using the violence of government to prop up their own out-of-date and therefore failed at this point in time
obsolete
profit models. Obsolete, that's the right word. But seriously, though, let me tell you, it's amazing what technology does, because even like we talk about the Silicon Valley companies, Microsoft and Apple and Google, all these messy people involved in all these yucky things. But technology and the free market of technology has actually brought all these people together, whether the good ones, the bad ones, and everyone in between, and we've actually all benefited from each other.
Right.
That's what free markets do. Like, get this, Microsoft, they started using Linux for a lot of their products, okay? So Linux is part of Microsoft's product. Now, Linux, is a completely open source thing. It's been that way forever. Well, just a few years ago, Microsoft was the number one contributor of code and fixes and updates to Linux. Microsoft, big, powerful Microsoft, they were the number one contributor that year to Linux, adding things, making Linux better. Why? Well, because they're using it now. But guess what? Linux is open. So that means everybody who uses Linux got to benefit from these things that Microsoft was doing.
Right, not to mention they got to benefit from the work of people who were paid probably too much to do that.
Probably. But then you have Facebook, okay? And Facebook needed better ways to render their UI, on their website. So they came up with some libraries like React, which do amazing things. And then they released that out in the open. Well, then other people started using it, and then other people started improving on it, and now you have a whole slew of different things that were inspired by that. So Mark Zuckerberg can be as crazy as he wants, but because of the way that technology has changed the software, market, and changed how code is done, all right, everybody's actually benefiting from Facebook. Another one is GitHub. They came up with their Atom shell, they called it. Okay, which they used to run JavaScript on computers. Well, it was a runtime for running applications. And it went well. It worked well. So a number of companies like Microsoft and Slack and all these companies started building their programs on this framework or this runtime. It's now called Electron. And guess what? Microsoft, the majority of their products, of their consumer-facing products, are now built off of that. And the software that I make every day is built off of that as well. But because Microsoft builds applications on that JavaScript runtime, they contribute code back to it, and they make it better. And every time Microsoft makes it better to benefit their programs, I benefit from it, and my clients benefit from it as well, because that's what we use. But that's all because of technology and the open market.
Sounds like mutual aid to me.
It has caused multiple people, each looking out for their own self-interest, to indirectly benefit everybody else. That's what free markets do. Everyone is looking out for themselves. Nothing wrong with that. Everyone's trying to find the angle, trying to find the profit, trying to find the best way forward for them. And in the process, the market works out ways that everyone ends up fitting together without any central control whatsoever. Imagine that.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that's really the thing about technology is, for me, all of what you've said, all the things that I see that come out day after day, all of the the technological advances are really exciting for me. I mean, there's no, like, I'm not scared to death of AI or automation or Skynet, but a lot of people are. So I mean, like, and you see that when this Andrew Yang dude, who I think worked in the tech sector, comes up and he says, well, automation is going to get rid of all workers, and we need to start giving money to everybody. I mean, tell me, like, when you hear that, since you're in the tech sector, tell me what you think of that proposition.
It's just nuts. It's communism. Like, there's no way around it. Who knows? The guy's literally trying to buy votes. Whatever. It's the oldest trick in the book. So it has nothing to do with technology, in my opinion. It's just one more megalomaniac trying to get power and trying to do it by using violence to take other people's money and pay off the people who supported him.
Right, and it blows my mind because the libertarians out there, I've talked about this before, but the libertarians out there,
in quotes.
Yeah, Yang Gang. Like, I literally saw people, like, libertarians, quote unquote, arguing that taxation may be theft, and if taxation is theft, then UBI must be a gift.
What?
How do you figure? Like, how
Yeah.
I think I sigh a lot on this show.
Yeah, I don't even care enough to bother. It's just, whatever. It's communism. It's stupid.
But I mean, like, I know there are a lot of fears, that automation and robots are going to take over all of the human jobs. And typically what I hear, because I don't think about it much, but I mean, every time there's a new robot or a new something, there's got to be someone who takes care of that, who does the maintenance on it, etc. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like, I mean, that's an obvious example, but I mean, people act like this is unheard of. Like, there used to be gas lamps on every street corner that some fool had to go around with a match on a stick and light every single one of them every night.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sure that there was someone who was like, don't bring in electricity. The gas lighters, they're going to lose their jobs. What are we going to do? We've got to get
the wagon wheel makers. Got it. Yeah. All these different places. It's just a red herring.
Right. And what do you
like
see?
It's not even worth talking about. If you really want to talk about, I mean, there's so many other things out there that's actually taking jobs away from people.
Let's talk about that.
I was just talking to someone about that today. It was regarding college degrees. She has 11 years of experience in this field. Worked her way up to be running the entire department. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they started taking advantage of her, because she's been there forever, and sometimes companies get comfortable with someone. They just start pushing more and more and more and more, thinking they'll never leave. Yeah, exactly. So she thought, well, go ahead and put on my resume. Why not? Start looking for other jobs. But guess what? All the jobs available, you were required to have a college degree to do it. Required. So her experience, everything, means nothing, because those jobs are being stolen from people like her because of an arbitrary, requirement to have a degree. So let's talk about the government working with the colleges, working with the big businesses, and all these people colluding together to prop each other up and make money off of each other. Oh, while people like her then can get cheated out of a job. Like, that's not fair. And that's real people not being able to get real jobs, okay? These are skilled people. These are people with experience. But no, you're not even allowed to be considered because, you didn't go through the establishment paths that the government and the education industry has decided.
Right, not to mention that, our education system is completely socialized. So that's pushed.
Well, exactly.
It's pushed from kindergarten. You have to go to college. You have to have a degree. You have to do this. You have to do that. I bought into it, unfortunately. I have a degree. But what I found as soon as I got that degree, actually before, I just, the sunken cost fallacy, I fell right into that. And I was like, I've already spent so much on it, I need to finish. But what I found was that, the market is so flooded with bachelor's degrees now that even that is not worth much anymore. Like, I at this point, I
have to get a master's
degree
for it to mean anything. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and even not even that. It's like bachelor's used to mean to some people to some companies was, this is a person who could stick it out and could do 4 years of college. We can trust them to be reliable. Like that's what my parents told me. That's what a college degree is for. Doesn't matter what you get it in, because that's how companies work. Because that's how they worked back in the day. But now it has, if you have a bachelor's degree, it has to be super specialized, or you have to have a master's degree. Like, I bought every lie that they told me.
Well, yeah.
And now I'm in massive debt because of it.
It's all about value. When you have, if Ryan has a diamond and no one else has a diamond, the value of the diamond's pretty high. If everybody in his neighborhood all of a sudden has a diamond or some other good, it's not really that valuable anymore because everybody has it. It's so easily available. You could just, everybody has one. But the best job postings I love to see when it says that you need a bachelor's is required plus 5 years experience.
Right.
Those are the best ones. So not only do you need the magical piece of paper, but you also need to somehow have 5 years of experience into like some entry level field magically to get the job. That's the best.
I have to be honest, becoming libertarian has really led me to hate magical pieces of paper.
Yeah,
seriously.
The sacred scroll.
But, my point with this is the same elitist tech people and politicians, I'll put them all in one big thing. Those people who talk about the evil machines who are going to come take all of our jobs, okay? Those are the same people who are propping up the educational system and who are screwing people out of jobs. And if you ask them about the college degrees, like Yang, what do you bet? If he ran some big tech company, chances are the majority of the positions were all, required to have X degree and whatever. Yeah, you're potentially cheating people out of jobs way more than robots ever have or will.
Right, and that's what frustrates me, because like I said, I have a degree, but because I don't have the specialized degree or the master's degree, like I have to have, like Phil said, the 5 years experience. But like the jobs that I've had that I liked the most, the jobs that I've been the most productive at, were the ones where I walked in knowing nothing, and they taught me how to do it. And what was funny is I did that.
That's humanity.
Right, and as I did it I worked a job in software as a service at one point. I didn't know sequel was anything but the second movie in a series before I started. But then I got in there and I said, hey, I want to do this. Teach me, show me how to do this. And I spent some time on these little free websites like SQL Learner or whatever.com, and I learned how to write it. I didn't take any classes. I didn't do anything. And I did a good job. My boss was a huge jerk, which is what led me to leave eventually, because there's only so much hate you can take in a day before you quit. But that's one of my favorite things, was learning something new and being good at it. I would have, now I'm trying to get back into software as a service because I enjoyed it so much. But at this point, I don't have the experience because I didn't stick around for 5 years there.
That is so cost effective, though, to take somebody, okay, invest a small amount of very specialized training in order and
Right.
work with them to get them to be able to do what you need them to do for whatever your specific job is that you're hiring them to do, okay? The educational system is propped up by the government and elites who are working together, colluding together to prop up this completely arbitrary, at this point, educational system. Whether it's K through 12 or college degrees, at this point it's all freaking arbitrary, because information is opened up through the internet and through everything to the point that you just don't need that stuff. Whether it's kids spending years memorizing facts that, guess what, they'll, for the rest of their life, they're not going to remember, but they're going to be able to look up instantaneously.
False
Guess
facts. Let's be real. Like, false facts. So many of them are complete bullcrap anyway. Like, especially when it comes to history.
Oh.
Well,
I can't tell you how much I had to unlearn. And I wasn't even in the public school system.
But the only reason you've been able to is because there's so much more of a market of information now. There wasn't that expanded market of information 100, 200 years ago. It just didn't exist. You basically had, the world elites who are the ones recording and sharing information. But times have changed. And guess what? We're still, just like we're propping up the college system, I mean, the entire education system is not sustainable on its own. It has to be propped up by some sort of violence. It has to be propped up by the government because it's obsolete. We just don't need it. Yeah, well, my kids, they taught themselves to read, every single one of them. We've not taught a single kid to read on our own yet. They just did. They wanted to. So
How'd you? Okay, so
they did.
By the way, after we have this conversation, I do want to talk to you about some of that stuff because I have, Ezra's 4 now, and my Soren's 3, and I need to get them. I want to help them get started. I'm not really sure, so we'll talk about that later. But I just wanted to mention that. I need to figure out what you're doing because like some of the stuff Isaac is doing blows my mind. That's a smart kid.
He's amazing. Yeah.
It's a smart kid.
Hey, hold on. Going just rewinding a minute when we were talking about how they don't mind cheating people out of jobs with these arbitrary requirements. I would just like to also add they don't mind pricing people out of a job with these stupid minimum wage laws. So you get it on both ends of the spectrum. You're placing people out of the market with these arbitrary requirements for you need 5 years experience for a job or you need X amount of degrees, but you also on the other end of the spectrum, the lower end of the spectrum, you're pricing those people out of a job because they don't have skills to enter the marketplace and no one's going to pay, or with these minimum wage laws, they have to be guaranteed a certain amount of money, but they don't have any skills and they're unskilled, so they're not worth that much money, if that makes sense, if you get what I'm saying. So they're doing it on both ends of the spectrum, and it's just ridiculous how many people that they're really just putting out of the market.
The emperor has no clothes,
And that's what I love about technology, because without it, I would never have found Ron Paul videos. I never would have read a word of Murray Rothbard.
The three of us never would have met.
Yeah. Right, I never would have met you guys. I never would have learned how much fun it is to troll people. I mean, like, there's so much to my life that has been added because of the internet, because of
I wouldn't be
technology.
Working on my own from home, interacting daily with clients from all over the... Well, I have software that I've built that's used daily all around the entire world. And that's just because of the internet. I've never met these people, but guess what? We're working together to make amazing software.
And we're forgetting the most important part. Memes.
Definitely memes.
That's the best part of the internet.
No, not according to some people.
Well,
not according to Adam Graham.
Special shout out to the guy who hates memes.
Yeah. The worst part of internet culture. Yeah.
Right, it's not doxing or sexual harassment, it's memes.
Or
that's the worst part of internet culture.
Or Indian guys sliding into your DM wanting to see you naked. That's not bad at all, but it's memes.
We love you, Adam, even though on this singular point you're totally wrong.
You're the worst on this point.
All right, I think with that, I think we've had a good interview, Phil. I think you did an okay job. I'm glad you decided to not talk as much because we wanted the smart people talking.
Oh, thanks.
Well, we didn't want to be too nerdy.
That was my plan. Yeah, I didn't want to turn off viewers with my nerd speak.
But no, I think that was good. Is there anything, Ryan? Is there anything interesting or something that you? I mean, I definitely want you to talk about the new podcast again. But is there anything that you think needs to be said when it comes to technology, libertarianism, whatever?
Well, one thing I'll say is that Facebook needs to die. painful. Very soon death.
It's so useful though. Like that's the problem with it.
It is, but it's also hell.
It is.
It's the place where we all got to know each other. And there's no other decent alternatives out there yet.
Right, and that's what frustrates me, because every time we talk about being frustrated with Facebook because of the rampant leftism, the rampant just violation of free speech, it's like people are like, oh, you should get on Minds, you should get on Gab, and I'm like, I tried those. I don't like them. They don't fulfill the same function.
Yeah, they don't. The biggest problem with those, okay, all of those, basically almost every single one, the biggest problem with those is they're all modeled after Twitter. They're all trying to be a better Twitter with some features from Facebook. But, I mean, public posting is cool. And they're like, yeah, put everything out in the open. Everything should be open, cool. Information wants to be free. And I agree with that, okay? But we have so many, like you and I, our groups, we have so many, we've learned so much and grown so much and become friends and built relationships and helped each other out and made jokes and done things that can only be done behind closed doors.
Right.
Or even something, you have a topic as divisive as vaccines. Every once in a while, my wife or I will post something about vaccines on our wall, okay, on our Facebook wall.
Oh, boy.
My wife does that, and I get crap from my family, by the way.
Yeah, but let me tell you, those don't come from nowhere. Those are after hours and hours of talking with people and learning things and reading and having all these conversations, about what's real and what's not, and what websites are good and what's not, and what videos are worth watching and what's not. We have those conversations behind closed doors so that we then come out knowing, oh, this is good information here. I know. So here I'm going to share this. But the same people who would, pick apart, who might disagree, they would look at those same conversations, and you just can't have those conversations out in the open because you're asking what's true, what's not, what's good, what's like working through these things on your own. You don't want to have those out in the open. You want to figure out what you do believe yourself and what you are willing to share, and then you share that publicly.
Right, and that's I mean, just the
you
fact
need that space.
Yeah, the fact that I can have a secret group where I can talk out politics is so important to me. Not because I'm afraid to talk about it. I'll talk about it with anyone any day. I don't typically do it on my Facebook wall, but that's just because
people are too stupid.
But you have to qualify everything you say based on the audience.
I don't mind defending an idea that I say, but there are people that you can defend them to that know where you're coming from, and that's such a valuable resource. Like I can talk to you, or I can talk to Phil about any number of, like we did tonight, like any number of questions that I have, and I don't have to worry about taking it back to zero and explaining to people why it's wrong to hurt people or take their stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know how much time I would waste if I said everything that I said in our secret groups, that if I said that in public, you know how many friends I would lose.
Well, but also something as simple as a joke,
Right.
You make certain jokes in certain contexts because you understand that the people there will understand what you're talking about and won't take it wrongly.
They'll understand the reference.
I mean, a lot of people, they could lose their jobs if they spoke their mind, because that's just the world we live in. It's like the establishment, everything is just closing in. Speech is being chopped off everywhere. People are losing their jobs because of things they say on social media. We need secret, private areas to have conversations with people of like mind.
I had a close call with that in October, with the job that I'm working at now, which I do not put on anything connected to my name at all, because in fact, there's some places where I should just remove myself completely. But like at the job that I was working, some people decided they didn't like one of their coworkers and decided they wanted to take him down, and decided, hey, let's take down Cam while we're at it. And so they made up all sorts of lies. One of them was that I would have open conversations condemning abortion.
Nice.
Which is like, yeah, okay, I'm pro-life. I think killing babies is wrong. And if you don't like that, too bad. But in public, where I'm your boss and I'm at work, I don't talk about that because I know that I could lose my job. And so this girl decided to tell my boss in the HR department that I would have these conversations and condemn abortion, when in fact she would be on her phone when I told her not to be on her phone, on Facebook having an argument about abortion, and then she would say something out loud, and I'd be like, I don't really want to talk about that, and I don't think we're going to agree. That's not
Hateful.
saying anything.
Yeah.
But I got close to losing my job for denying the conversation.
Works like the dinner table rules. You shouldn't discuss money, politics, or religion at the dinner table. That's why you don't do at work either.
But it's not just at work; it's everywhere now.
That's true.
Some person goes to some march to report on it, to see what's going on, and they find out the next week they got pictured by somebody and doxxed, and now they've lost their job.
Right, and the girl even claimed that I told. Okay, so one of the things was that apparently I had told them that they were going to hell. Didn't happen. Not the way I talk. And secondly, one of the girls said, Cam said that that really deep down I'm still a Christian and I just don't know it.
What does that mean?
Holy bad theology. I would never do that.
You're going to hell, sinner. Repent.
But you're actually secretly a Christian, and you'll figure it out someday. How do these things match?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Like
that sounds like a well-rounded, perfectly put together individual right there.
Oh, it is. But yeah, she's not with the company anymore. Thank the Lord.
I had a similar story where I was eating lunch in the break room right after Trump got elected. And this guy goes, they're of course, they're criticizing Trump on the television in the break room, and everyone's gathered around it in their little clique. And this guy goes, Trump's the only, what did he say? He goes, Trump's the only U.S. president who never served in the military. And I just went, what? I just, it wasn't even, it was just a reflex. I was just like, what? That's not true.
Wasn't Clinton literally a draft dodger?
None of them have. For the most part. But you should have just seen it. It was just the face of groupthink they all turned and we're just like, what? And I was like, oh, I gotta go. Hold on. I'll eat my lunch somewhere else. See ya. Not getting fired for this. Not getting fired for that, buddy.
All that to say, my new project, hopefully, might be able to, in some small ways for some people, scratch that itch. So we'll see. Time will tell. But I'm excited to get something to show. Excited to have the prototype done.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm glad to have been able to be a part of it and give little pieces here and there of ways I could help. But yeah. So I think that we should probably call it. It's been about an hour, and I don't think anyone's going to listen past that. They might.
Unless you think
we get fiery.
Unless you think the possibility of Terminators is real.
Do you think Terminators could happen?
Specifically, Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
See, that's already happening, and we don't need Terminators to do it. We have people in blue suits with badges who do that every day. Come on. Once again, people talk about these nightmare scenarios when the fact is we see these things already. So come on, let's talk about the real issues. But no, it's a freaking long time. Look at your ads on Facebook and Amazon and Google and see how smart AI is these days. We're not going to have either. There's going to be a bigger nightmare than we realize because they're going to release, today's AI with weapons. That's pretty terrible. Or they're just, it's going to be, generations before they're at that level.
I do get a little freaked out when I turn to my wife and I say, hey, what do you think about replacing our washer and dryer? And then I get a notification on Facebook and then I see an ad from Home Depot, a sponsored ad for a washer and dryer.
Yeah. But of course that's so rudimentary. That doesn't take any sort of reasoning or
my point is my personal
whatsoever.
FBI agent or NSA analyst that follows me around.
They're looking out for you.
Yeah, they're looking out. It's not, it's all right. They could have maybe done a better ad, little like 20% off or something. But what are you gonna do?
Hey Alexa,
Uh-oh, here we go.
thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Isn't she sweet?
All right. So I think we're gonna call it. And I have one last question for you, Ryan.
All right.
What is the best movie ever made, and why is it Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice?
Because Zack Snyder is a freaking genius. See, the thing is, when Man of Steel came out, people were shocked because they flattened the entire freaking city, and it was disgusting. And you're the viewer watching this going, is this guy really a good guy? I mean, did he really save anybody? He literally destroyed the entire city.
All right, folks. Thank you for having a bit of fun with us and joining us on our first foray into our interview series. A very, very special thank you to Ryan Burgett for coming on and dealing with us. He definitely had the right to be here.
He deserved to be here, but no, I really can't say thank you enough to him. Although I totally forgot to during the actual interview.
Because you're a jerk.
Correct. But yeah, no, thank you, Ryan. We couldn't have had an interview with Ryan Burgett without you. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon. Just type in "This is MLGA." If you'd like to send us an email, type it again at gmail.com.
Yep, and hit us up, subscribe, and make sure to rate us on iTunes. It helps us grow and guarantees new episodes. That really helps us. The reviews and the ratings really helps us hopefully get put on the new and noteworthy section of iTunes. That's our new goal. So let's make sure we're doing that.
Also, don't forget to check out the MLGA Network. We're a small and scrappy group of libertarians that share all of the best liberty podcasts on MLGAnetwork.com. Make sure to check that out. And we're going to even have more original shows like we mentioned in this episode coming very soon. So keep an eye out for Thank You For Your Servers. Should be coming soon. It has some good personalities on it. I can't wait to hear the first episode.
And as always, we're happy to be here, and we're happy you're with us. Stay sane, everybody.